Greetings and welcome everybody to a new video and book reading of the reading and discussion of the book Codeword Barbelon, 666 Danger in the Vatican, read and discussed by Joggler66, host of the program Hour of the Truth, and in conjunction with me, Bret Norman, an advocate for the study of Protestantism and the departure of ritualistic worship in an increasingly Romanized world. Today is December 21st, 2017, and I would like to introduce my dear friend and brother in Christ, Jörg Glismann of Belgium. Jörg, how are you doing today?
Oh, thank you for the warm welcome, Bret, and I love the introduction you just did.
Great.
I'm quite fine. Yeah, I'm quite fine. This afternoon I was going to the courthouse in Leuven, the city I live in, because in August of 2016 I was flashed on the highway with a little high speed, and it took the persecutor more than a year to bring that before court in a trial, and then I was sentenced to a fine, but I could convince the judge not to file me with a driver's license rejection. How do they say that when they take your driver's license for a few days or weeks,
right?
Because I need that for my job. But
I think we call it a revocation.
A revocation, yeah, revocation
yes.
of a driver's license, yeah. But the persecutor was not satisfied with that, so she went into higher appeal, and I had to appear again. And that was more than a month ago. And in the end, the judge told me, well, when you want to know what I sentence you to, then you come the 21st of December from 2 o'clock in the afternoon here, because we won't send that by mail. You gotta go there and ask for your sentence yourself, otherwise you are not even informed. Then all of a sudden, a few weeks later, probably you get a letter, and that tells you you have to pay this fine, and your driver's license is revoked for a week, 2 weeks,
right.
a month, whatever.
Right.
So I went there and had a little fun over there. And of course, the persecutor got what she wanted. That's always the way. Satan always gets what he wants.
Oh yeah.
And
of course.
So the fine was unchanged. And now they revoke my driver's license for 8 days. And, I don't give a rat's ass. I give it to them. If I stop driving, I don't know. And it still takes a few weeks until that sentence comes through. But that showed me once again in what kind of a system, quote-unquote system, that we are living. In a system where you even have to go into that city to ask for your sentence. And when I wanted to take that with me, she said, no, you can't take that with you, but we can make you a copy. I said, okay, do me a copy. Well, that costs €2.60, and it will send to you by mail within 3 days.
Oh man!
As if they are not even in the possibility to make a copy there, as if they don't have a copy machine there, you know. And I said to them, what is this joke about anyway? That I have to come here to ask for my sentence instead of you guys sending. Yeah, we have so many things to do. I said, and you ask more than €100 on the costs of this whole court thing. And then you are short of €1.50 for a stamp to put it in an envelope and send it to my home. What kind of justice is this? So I was really laughing with these guys over there, with that woman over there. She was very friendly, and I really had to watch what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, everything you can and do say will be recorded.
Yeah, can and will be used against you, Bret.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I just had my fun with it, you know. So
sure. Yep, it's all you can do.
Yeah, I thought if the driver's license revocation is more than a week, I mean 8 days a week, that's okay, that's the norm. I told myself if that is more than that, then I'm gonna go into appeal because I know I need my driver's license to earn money. So when they sentence me to a fine, they always have to give me the possibility to earn the money to pay the fine. When they
Oh
revoke my
yeah.
driver's
Well, there's
license, I
so
can't
much
do it.
speeding that goes on, and believe me,
Yeah.
I'm just as much of a lead foot as anyone else. And if I ever got caught, it'd be the same thing, more or less. But they don't revoke licenses here; they just fine you.
Yeah,
You-
lately I have really stopped with my lead foot because I also have that, a foot of lead, huh? A very heavy
Yeah.
red foot. I really stopped that, and I'm really changing my attitude towards driving in that way, and I have no problem
Sure.
with that. I mean, that's probably because I'm getting older. I don't know.
Sure. Sure.
Anyway, when I
Yeah.
when I
You
when
know
I
what? It comes and goes, doesn't it?
yeah,
I have the same issue. It's
sometimes
like,
sometimes you have that when you are driving
what am I
behind.
thinking?
Yeah, when
Driving around like a little upset kid. I mean, it doesn't help anybody.
right, and sometimes when you drive behind these idiots who cannot drive anyway, then you are
I know
then
that's
you
what gets me.
then you are forced to overtake them and all that stuff, and then
Yes.
you are going to be aggressive, even though that you actually don't want to be. But
Yes.
Brett, this system makes us aggressive because
It
this
does.
system works against our nature. Yeah,
It
it
does. It
speaks.
does.
This system is always about control, about authority above us, an
Hmm.
authority that we as Bible-believing Christians have problems to accept because it is not ordained from God in the way that we understand the Bible.
Hmm.
And every time when we move outside of our four walls where we live in, you in your house over there in the United States and me in this apartment here in Leuven in Belgium, when we go outside of our walls, out of our quote-unquote sanctuary,
Hmm.
we have to go into the system and deal with that system, and we have to deal with lying, cheating, bribing. I don't know
Hmm.
what else word you can make.
Yeah, bribe.
You
Yeah,
can
right.
you
Bribing.
can tell
Yes.
about these guys in the system that we
Oh,
are,
yeah.
and you are and when even when you just go drive a car, people are so selfish
Oh,
in
yeah. Yeah,
traffic
yeah.
today. Sometimes
Well,
they
especially when the traffic gets bad.
yeah,
Yes.
the point is that it costs them apparently a lot of money just to sit there with a little smile and somewhere here and there wink somebody in front of you and say, okay, maybe I have priority here, but hey, you can go because it's going slow anyway. You come from a little side road and you want to go in there. I don't have no problems doing that anymore. I never had problems doing that anymore, but other people often of the times do. And
Hmm.
that
Right.
makes you when you go into that traffic, when you go there, that can even make you aggressive sometimes, and that
See,
is
that's exactly it.
and
It's
that is
called contagious.
that is what I
Yes.
that is what I
It
don't
is
want, because that
contagious.
aggressivity comes from the devil.
Hmm.
And
It does.
I don't want the devil to have any grip on me. I want Jesus Christ to have a grip on me 24/7.
I
Huh?
know it's sad. Well, I don't know. You probably have as much of schedule as me. When you drive around doing deliveries, sometimes you have 45 minutes each way,
Mm.
and you're fighting all this traffic, and it's stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. And I've found several things have helped me in the past. One of which is a little diffuser to put some essential oils into, and just smelling those oils actually really calm me down, and I can just let all of that uh, worldly aggression just kind of just go the way it goes, and
Mm.
you just kind of deal with it. But there are times when you lose patience.
Yeah, and that's what you shouldn't. We
I
should
know.
be in control of ourselves and not get
Yep.
ensnared by the game the devil plays with us.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
that's the message that I want to bring out, because if people say, hey, you come here to read Codeword Barbelon, not to babble about all this stuff I'm not interested in. But I can
Yeah.
tell you this gibberish, or whatever you want to call it, to me it is very interesting to do also, because we are dealing with this life here on this in this world. And Jesus
Yes.
said that we are living in this world, but we are not to be of the world. And
That's right.
that is the big danger, that when we associate ourselves with the outside world, where we have no choice, because we have to do that because we need to drive, we need to earn our money, we need to pay taxes. Yeah, we have to give Caesar
Hmm.
what is Caesar's, and we have to give God what is God. And as long as we use the money of Caesar, we have to give Caesar what Caesar asks. That's a
That's
very
right.
simple point. A lot of people don't understand that very simple message from Jesus Christ. give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's, but as long as we use Caesar's money, we have to give Caesar the money. And we have to pay our bills, we have to pay our rent, we have to pay for our food, we have to pay for our obliged insurances for the car and all that stuff, we have to pay for our gasoline, therefore we have to earn money, therefore we have to go in that system, and trying to be, not to get entangled in that system while we are in it, actually, is a very hard thing to do. And therefore I just think it is sometimes here and there a little bit interesting to reflect on that when you come home and just take a few minutes and ask yourself, what have I done today that is not correct? I have sinned, you know, because every time when you come back to your home, when you come from that system into your own four walls again, whether they are yours or you rented is not the point, and you are back in your sanctuary, you have to reflect on the sins that you committed. And I can assure you, you did sin. You cannot not sin when you are out there in the kingdom of Antichrist, moving around and be there. You have to sin. You cannot even avoid it. And that's the bad thing about it. And I hate sinning because Jesus saved me and protects me from sinning. So at least when I come back here into my sanctuary, I know that I have been sinning. I have been sinning by, you know, speeding on the highway. I know.
Yes.
But yeah, you know, here and there, why do you do that? I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that, and if you don't have any more comments on that, then let's go back to the book, Codeword Barbelon.
Please, I'm all set.
Which is absolutely on the agenda for us to read. We are only on page 19, and we still have a few hundred pages to go in this volume and another volume, but I love it. I love the recordings we did so far, and I really want to continue today in the under chapter that is called A Great Secret, the Constitutions of the Jesuits, because we were dealing with the Secreta Moneta, that were the secret instructions of the Jesuits the last time, and now we are going to deal with the constitutions of the Jesuits. And I have a little surprise for you prepared, and when time is due in the reading I will mention that one. Okay. Is it okay for you, Bret, when I start reading then?
Please, go ahead.
So for everybody who follows us in the reading of the book, this is on page 19, on the third part of the page, A Great Secret, the Constitution of the Jesuits. And don't forget, the undertitle of the book, Codeword Barbelon, is also The Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination. They have the plans and they execute them. And for these plans they have made up their own constitution, and now we are learning about right that. The constitutions are the articles of incorporation of the Society of Jesus. They are in fact the Alpha and the Omega of Jesuitism. Jesus Christ is the Alpha and Omega of everything, and the articles of incorporation, the constitutions of the Jesuits, are the Alpha and Omega of Jesuitism. The constitutions first gained official sanction on September 27th in 1540, when Antichrist Pope Paul III, after careful consideration of Loyola's plan, exclaimed, "Hoc est digitus Dei!" This is an act of God. I think I mentioned that already in the last reading, if I'm not mistaken. Don Ignatius de Loyola, and he has a lot of names. Inigo, Ignatius, and so many other names. Probably will come along a few others also in other books, but it's always the same person. Don Ignatius de Loyola. Ignatius was, by the way, a name that he took later in his life. Inigo was his initial name, but he Romanized it. Was made the first Jesuit general. The bull of Antichrist Paul III, incorporating the society into the Catholic Church, gave to Ignatius Loyola and his companions the power. Carte blanche means a white card, meaning you can do everything. You get a card and you fill in whatever you want to do for yourself. That is the meaning of carte blanche. It's a permission, you know. You are giving a card with permission, with authority, of what you can do. When you get a white card, you fill in what you want to do yourself. As Aleister Crowley said it, do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That's a carte blanche, you know?
Sure.
So I say carte blanche, that's more the English expression, but it is carte blanche because it's French in the beginning. Carte means carte and blanche means white. Okay? So the Pope of Antichrist Paul III, which is not mentioned by name here, which is Regimini Militantis Ecclesiae, and you can look that up on the internet yourself, gave carte blanche, or a white card, to make the constitution and rules and also to alter them. This legislative power, quote unquote, to make constitutions and quote unquote rules rested in the hands of the general and his office. That is, in a quote unquote congregation representing them. You have to understand, dear listener, what happens here. The Pope gives the total rule to the Black Pope, the general of the Society of Jesus. And when the Pope does that, that actually means that he is giving up his own authority. He gives the Black Pope the chance, the possibility to even gain power over him, because he got carte blanche, right? He got full permission. You want to say something, Bret?
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just thinking about something else. I'm sorry.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Now, that congregation continues to exist even to this very day, and until April 19, 2005, it was headed by the present Pope, Benedict XVI, who was Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, then at the time. By the way, before this Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger became Antichrist Pope Benedict XVI, he was 25 years the head of the office of the Inquisition, which has today, of course, another name. It is not called the Inquisition anymore. It's the same office, but it has another name. It is the Office of the Doctrine of the Faith. The bull of Antichrist Pope Paul III in 1540 gave every Jesuit a dispensation to, quote, lay aside all professions of regard to the papal cause, and make outward profession to any religion or government they choose, unquote. It is said that Antichrist Pope Paul III rejoiced at the reading of the constitutions, and that a congregation of cardinals had also reported most favorably to the Pope upon them. But despite their alleged virtues, these canons were kept as a great secret. Now, the constitutions, as we shall see, is an enormous secret code. And now comes a quote. Translated into Latin by the Jesuit Polancus and printed in the College of the Society of Jesus at Rome in 1558, they were jealously kept secret, the greater part of the Jesuits themselves knowing only extracts from them, unquote. And we can verify that quote when we open the book by G.B. Nicolini, History of the Jesuits, which is actually called History of the Jesuits, Their Origin, Progress, Doctrines and Design, on page 30. Now, that book from G.B. Nicolini I can advise everyone to get, and you can get it easily as a PDF on the internet. And because I have that here, it is a 556 page long book, I will just go and read a little bit from the preface of that book that was cited here in Codeword Barbelon by G.B. Nicolini, and want to tell you what G.B. Nicolini in his preface in the book History of the Jesuits, Their Origin, Progress, Doctrines and Design has to say about the Jesuit order. I trust, Nicolini says, that in the following pages, only about 555 more pages than this one, I have succeeded in the task I proposed to myself of conveying to my readers a just and correct idea of the character and aims of the Brotherhood of Loyola. The Brotherhood of Loyola is another term for the Jesuit order. La Compagnie de Jesús, as it is called in Spanish, or the Company or the Society of Jesus. At least I have spared no pains to accomplish this end. I honestly believe that the book was wanted, for liberal institutions and civil and religious freedom have no greater enemies than that cunning fraternity, while it is equally true that although the Jesuits are dreaded and detested on all sides as the worst species of knaves, there are few who are thoroughly acquainted with their eventful history, and with all those arts by which the fathers have earned for themselves a disgraceful celebrity. The fault does not altogether lie with the public, for, strange to say, there is no serious and complete history of this wonderful society. I have done my best to supply the deficiency, and I indulge the hope that, if the book is fortunate enough to challenge public attention, it may be productive of some good. In no other epoch of history certainly have the Jesuits been more dangerous and threatening for England than in the present. I am no alarmist. I refuse to believe that England will relapse under the papal yoke and return to the darkness and ignorance of the Middle Ages because some score of citizens pass over to the Romish communion. But at the same time, I do believe that many bold and less reflective persons make too light of the matter, and are wrong in refusing to countenance vigorous measures, not for religious persecution, but to check the insolence and countermine the plots of these audacious monks. And with this I will stop reading of the book from Niccolini. But I think that it is very important that here and there we cite the sources that P.D. Stuart takes to base his book upon, and then read here and there a little bit from the book, because we are going to read other quotes also coming from James Edgar Wiley and the History of Protestantism, and in the very first part we also read a little bit from that book. And I think this is at least my idea about it, and I think that Bret will agree with me on that, that we are not only here just to read this book from cover to cover, but to discuss the book and to try to give you an insight that is even deeper than P.D. Stuart with his book does, and that is also only possible when we take into consideration his sources of the book, and can even widen his quotes like I just did by reading to you part of the preface of G.B. Niccolini's History of the Jesuits, to make sure that you understand that the constitutions that have been formed by the Jesuit general and his companions at that time were written under a carte blanche, means under complete freedom of action they ever wanted to do. And therefore I thought that it's very interesting not only to read the meaning and opinion and the writing of P.D. Stuart in this book, but also to involve the people that he quoted as sources in his book. Do you agree with me on that, Bret?
Oh, absolutely right. Yes, and it's not a matter of just covering the items contained in the book, but also everything related to that, and however long that takes to do. I have no problem. If this takes 300 recordings at an hour apiece, it's not a problem for me. Whatever, the sky's the limit, and I'm not going to put limitations on any of this because it all is very relevant today. It's been swept under the rug. People don't really recognize what a Jesuit is in the mainstream, nor do they care. And, it's about time that somebody becomes active in starting to fact check what's going on with this government we have today. It's not really an easy thing to do, Jörg, is it?
No, it is not an easy thing to do, and it requires a lot of research on your own. And I think that it is also very important that we point our listeners and viewers of the video to the point that it is not done by only listening to us when we cite things from the book from P.D. Stuart on the one hand, from his sources on the other hand, or from the Bible on the third hand. I think it is absolutely necessary. It is obligatory. It is, what else strong words do you have in the same sentence? In the same sense, it is of initial substance, importance that everybody does his own research. You cannot rely on what other people tell you. Jesus warns in the Bible, be not deceived by men.
That's right.
And why did he say
that? Take heed that no one deceives you. Yeah,
and why did he say that? Because he knows there are false teachers out there. And Jesus knew that only the truth that you find out for yourself is the truth you can expect for yourselves. I have it very often on the videos that I release, whether in German or in English. In Dutch I didn't have even one comment yet, but in German or in English I get comments on my videos. And I am so sick of people when I speak about, like in the very first chapter of Behind the Dictators, on the subject of the Jesuits, Jews and Freemasons. And I'm so sick of comments of people who are just parroting what they have heard on David Icke's broadcast, what they have heard under Alex Jones, what they have heard or read when they studied Tex Mars and all that stuff, and listen to them. And they are just parroting what these guys are saying. And I am mad at these comments on the one hand, and on the other hand I pity the person who does that, who is not willing to look beyond the horizon, to widen his view and to say, I have to do my own research because maybe it's comfortable that everybody tells me that, but you know what everybody tells me, maybe that is not true because everybody tells it. And we know from the Bible that the majority is always wrong. The majority never was right.
Yep, the wide gate.
Yeah, and that's the same situation we have to deal with today. And therefore I find it of utmost importance, that was the expression I was looking for, I find it of utmost importance that you do your own research. And you know what? Do. And when you do, and you find out for yourselves that what we say on this broadcast is right, come back and listen more to us. And again, check us. And then advertise us on any social media that you are using. Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, I don't know, whatever social media you are on. Re-upload this work on YouTube channels, on Vimeo channels, on Daily Motion channels, on I don't know what else video platform is out there. If you are convinced that what you are listening here to is the truth, then get it out. Because when you know the truth and you don't warn your fellow brother, you betray your fellow brother. It is your duty to share the truth when you know it.
Yes, and depending on who you are talking to, you know, there are people that I know that are grown up in families that are involved with Jesuitism, and perhaps they just haven't taken a step outside of the ritualistic worship and outside of the church and outside of all these different layers of this onion that Jörg and I were talking about, and question it again, then maybe they can take a different look at it. Maybe. But that's not up to us to decide, is it, Jörg?
No, it's not up to us, but you know, many people are using comments to judge the people who are making the video on what they say without even having studied the subject on their own.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is really a problem. I have no trouble with anybody telling me that I am not telling the truth if actually I am not telling the truth. If I am not telling the truth, then I want to know it because I am standing for the truth. All I want is the truth, nothing but the truth. When I am betrayed and I don't tell the truth, then wonderful. Show it to me, prove it to me, and I will recant and I can set the record straight. But don't attack the message, or even don't attack the messenger just because you cannot deal with the message. Just because I am the first one, or Bret is the first one to tell you what the Jesuits are really all about. Because we studied it.
Yes,
It
I
is
have
not
a.
because
Mhm.
you are attending a Catholic or a Jesuit school or whatever institution, and you think that the Jesuits are the finest men on this earth, that is also the way. You have to look behind the curtain. You have to be assured of that there is an esoteric and an exoteric teaching. Exoteric for the lay people outside and esoteric for the initiated. And not the Jesuit on the ground, the lay Jesuit, let's say. He does not understand what the hierarchy understands. He does not know what the hierarchy knows, because they
Mhm.
are all as corpses. They have no own mind, and they don't even question any order
Yes.
given to them.
Yes, and they require the laity to be that way too.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that's what this is all about, is that, when we're on YouTube and we're making discussions on these horrible videos out there, uh, don't take it personal, but there's some really, really horrible videos out there that you just can't help but just you scream at the top of your lungs. What are you thinking? you know and you have to say something sometimes, and then these people come back at you. And this is the problem, is, do they know their Bible? Do they even know about uh the entire hatred for the Word of God that the Catholic Church holds for the Protestant truth of the Bible? Whoever talks about it? Where do you ever hear about it? You don't ever hear about it. Nobody's talking about it, not even in the pulpits of these churches that claim to be Protestant, because they've been taken over by Jesuitism. you know
The seminaries have been taken over already since more than 50 years. Yeah,
yeah,
that was the
that's
first
right.
thing. That was the first thing they did, starting with the Emancipation Act in 1829 in all England. And
Wow.
out of that came the Oxford movement in the 1830s. And in the 1870s and 80s, they started forging the Bibles.
That's right. And Tom did a really wonderful reading of
You
that
know,
book by James
there's,
Aiken
yeah,
Wiley.
Roman Civil Liberty by James Atkin Wiley.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
you know,
fantastic.
the, I advocate always to read the King James Bible, and Bret does that
Mm-hmm.
also. And there are
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who attack us on that. But before you attack us, have you ever thought about why doesn't someone who promotes the NIV attacks someone who reads of the ASB or the
Mm-hmm.
NASB or the New King James? No, because all these corrupted Bibles are in agreement. They are in the agreement on the basis of the Schofield Bible, which is the first Bible that was written with its comments to direct the people to futurism. Futurism, the greatest deception since the Garden of Eden, that the 70th week of Daniel 9 verse 24 through 27 is unfulfilled and deals actually not with Jesus Christ but with some future Antichrist who will come there in the future. And we don't need to care for about that because we are being raptured out anyway before. But I don't want to stray now to that other subject of futurism. I have been doing that in a lot of other videos and on my playlists, Inquisition Update and everything. You can hear Tom Fress speaking about that, and that is not the subject of today. But the point is, whenever I advocate the King James, I'm being attacked on that. If I ever
Mm-hmm.
advocate the NIV, nobody will attack me on that. Now ask
That's
yourself,
right.
why is always only the King James Version being attacked? Because the Word of God is under attack. And the Word of God is under attack especially from the Society of Jesus, who have been formed for one reason and one reason only: to bring an end to Protestantism and to make sure that the Pope will rule the world as he did before Protestantism even came up. When they succeed in annihilating the complete Protestant movement, they succeeded in putting the Pope up as the world leader that all media already now want to put him in that position. Like when Pope Francis was elected in Time magazine in 2013 Man of the Year. Pope of the world. And you know, P.D. Stuart's latest book that we are still awaiting to come, Pope Francis, Lord of the World, deals with that subject. And when you give the reign to Antichrist, you take away the reign of Christ. It's very easy because you cannot serve two masters.
That's right.
Okay, shall we go on reading?
I have a quick quote from 1 Corinthians, Jörg.
Sure.
1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned.
And that was 1 Corinthians?
Mm-hmm. Chapter 2, verse 14.
Chapter 2, verse 14. Well, very interesting that you bring that up, because in the very first words it says, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. What is the natural man? The natural man is every man who is born into this world and who does not know the Bible, who does not know the Word of God, who does not know the Spirit of God. The natural man, yeah? So we are not speaking about artificial intelligence or all that stuff. We are speaking about a natural born man. Whether he be male or female, doesn't matter, but we speak of the race of man, okay? That natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, because he does not know the Word of God. That's what the Bible here wants to tell us. Only the people who know the Word of God understand the Word of God, and they are in the Spirit. The natural man thinks that those words are foolishness unto him. Of course, because he has never been made known. They have never been made known to them. And this system, dear brother and sister, this system is made to make us all the natural man that receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. That is that whole system, this whole world where we live in, made for. To make us all victims of 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 14, as Bret just found and read to you. To make us all these natural men that receive nothing of the things of the Spirit of God, because we think this is all foolishness, and therefore we cannot know Him, because we have no spiritually discernment. Why do these natural men born into this society don't have any spiritual discernment? Because spirituality is taken out of this world. The Bible is taken out of this world. People today, when they are children, don't grow up with the Bible in their hands anymore, but they grow up with smartphones in their hands and with iPads and all that stuff. And they maybe can play computer games and kill other people at the age of 4 or 5, but they can't even write a sentence and don't understand our living God. Now, I don't want to go into a big side discussion on this point, but 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 14 is very interesting by Bret to bring this up, that we understand that the Bible warns of the natural man who does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, and this system is made therefore to make us all exact this natural man. That is the essence of the sentence that I want to tell you.
Sure, and it really relates to the constitutions too of the Jesuits, because they go exactly against this, I would say. Yep. So that's it.
So then I will continue on the middle of page 20 in the book. From paragraph 85 of the French edition of the Constitutions, we read, quote, "It will not be necessary for the novices to see all the constitutions, but only a set of excerpts," unquote. That's what I said already, in other words, in the beginning of this broadcast. Esoteric and exoteric, and knowledge only by need to know basis. The novices It will not be necessary for the novices to see all the constitutions, but only a set of excerpts. This reminds me of when I read Romanism and the Reformation, and Henry Gretton Guinness was was quoting from D'Aubigne's History of Protestantism, of Martin Luther when he found the Bible, that Martin Luther thought, well, this is all new to me. I have only known this and this and this from the Bible, and I thought that was it. But now there are all of a sudden so many more verses, so many more books. He did not get acquainted with the whole Bible. He was only shown excerpts, and these excerpts made him a fervent Roman Catholic. He even was such a fervent Roman Catholic that he joined the Augustinian order and went into a cloister. You have to understand that. That was the kind of brainwashing, because they did not show him the whole truth. They showed him only a part. The novices of the Society of Jesus are betrayed in the same way, because they only know a set of the excerpts of the constitutions. Paragraph 199 states, quote, "For those Jesuits who do not understand Latin, an explanation of the constitutions is enough." So when you are not smart enough to understand the language this is originally written in, you will only get what other people tell you in their own language about it. Now, this is exactly what happened through the Dark Ages in the churches. The Bible was forbidden. The Mass and the whole service in the churches in the Middle Ages was held in Latin, which nobody understood. And even when they understood it, they did not have the possibility to check it, because they were not allowed to hold the Bible and to check what the pastor said or the priest said from the pulpit, to check it with the Word of God. But they were all indoctrinated by a language that most of them didn't even understand. And even if they did understand, they did not have the papers to control the truth of that, what was spoken about. And this reminds me exact of that. For those Jesuits who do not understand Latin, an explanation of the constitutions is enough. Well, for those quote-unquote Christians who don't understand plain English, an explanation of the Bible is more than enough. Don't read the Bible for yourself. Don't understand the Bible. I'm going to explain it to you. The explanation of the Bible has to be more than enough for you, because if you are so dumb not to read it on your own, that's what you're going to believe. And that's what you do when you run after all these different teachers, whether on the internet or wherever, and you just parrot what they say.
Yes, there's an old saying. It goes, "We get what we deserve," or "You get what you deserve."
Yeah, no, that's
and
also
that
true.
Comes into play, for sure.
So those Jesuits who do not understand Latin, an explanation of the Constitution is enough. And so, for over 2 centuries after its creation, the Constitution was concealed from the knowledge of the world, and its contents shielded from all but a few of its members, until 1761, when, by quote-unquote accident, or maybe God's providence, quote, "they were at last dragged into the light from the darkness in which they had so long been buried," comments James Atkin Wiley. For as the Latin proverb says, "Veritas temporis filia," truth is the daughter of time. The brief history of how the constitutions came to be discovered is as follows. Now listen, because this is really getting interesting. Having been driven from France in 1594 by the French legislature, partly for their influence in the land, having been proved by the Dreyfus affair to be excessive, and partly from their fear of their regicides, they attempted the life of King Henry VI, which crime occasioned their first banishment from that country as, quote, "a society detestable and diabolical." Yeah, that quote comes from Niccolini again. We read that, right? And I want to make another comment here. I was just telling you that partly for their influence in the land, having been proved by the Dreyfus affair to be excessive. If you don't know what I mean by the Dreyfus affair, then I can turn you to the book The Secret History of the Jesuits by
Edmond
Edmond
Paris.
Paris. Thanks.
Yeah.
By Edmond Paris. And there you will learn of the Dreyfus affair. And I know that because I am still busy reading that book. I have done 12 or 13 videos so far, and I'm almost in the middle of the book now. And there it deals with the Dreyfus affair, and you will see how they used Dreyfus to blame the Jews for politics in France. So I'm not going into that right now, and I don't care because I cannot keep everything in my little brain. But I tell you, if you want to know about the Dreyfus affair, then you have two books that I can reference you to. The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmond Paris is one, and Behind the Dictators by Lehman is another one. And he also deals with the Dreyfus affair, but not in that depth as Edmond Paris does. It's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So having been driven from France in 1594 by the French legislature, partly for their influence in the land, having been proved by the Dreyfus affair to be excessive, and partly from fear of their regicides, they attempted the life of King Henry VI, which crime occasioned their first banishment from that country as a society detestable and diabolical. The sentence of the Parliament passed in 1594 further ordained that all the priests and scholars of the College of Clermont and others calling themselves the Society of Jesus as being corrupters of youth, disturbers of the public peace, and enemies of the king and enemies of the state should depart in 3 days from their house and college, and in 15 days out of the whole kingdom. Also, this is a quote from James Edgar Wiley's History of Protestantism. This College of Clermont, also known as College Louis le Grand, opened in 1563 as a Jesuit prep school for young men of noble lineage, is still situated on the Rue Saint-Jacques, which is the name of the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar Order, Jacques de Molay. Rue Saint-Jacques, or Street of Saint Jack, if you translate it into English. Rue Saint-Jacques. He was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar Order, and when he was burned on the stake in Paris, he asked for one favor: let me face Notre Dame, Our Lady, that cathedral that is there sitting on an island in Paris in the middle of the Seine River. That was a church the Templars built, and on the side that was facing the stake where Saint Jacques, or Jacques de Molay, was burned, was a figure of Baphomet, and he wanted to face that figure when he burned to death, and that wish was granted him. Whenever you have a chance to have a look at Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, how you probably say that in American English.
Right.
It's Notre Dame, Notre Dame, it's Our Lady. That's what it means.
Wow.
Whenever you have a chance of have a look at that church, I was there 3 or 4 times in my life. I've walked through it, and I never understood what all these ghouls and demons and devils are doing there. These figures, the figurines they put out there on the whole church. I never understood it. Of course, I had no idea of the Bible anyway at that time. I was ignorant as nothing, but, you know, have a look at for yourself, and maybe when Bret has the possibility to put some pictures here in the video of Notre Dame, you will see and understand what I mean.
Well, thank you for that, Jörg. Thank you very much, because, you know, we don't really, I never really registered with, you know, my dad was named Jack. So that's why I laugh when I heard you say Jack, you know, because, oh yeah, hi Dad. No, just kidding. But, I mean, you know, this is the kind of ignorance that we're dealing with. You know, we're not really that's one of the reasons I think this life is so important. There's a lot of things that aren't really clear, Jörg. It's not clear what the enemy is doing. We have to reason that through in our own minds and make up our own decisions, is what I wanted to say.
So continuing in the book, we note, by the by, that it was this college, Louis le Grand, the students were taught, quote, that it was allowable to kill kings, even the king regnant, when they were not in the church or approved of by the Pope.
Oh,
this goes back to the INRI of the Jesuit
Bingo!
Oath. This goes back to what is that called? INRI?
Yeah, Latin. It has two meanings.
Yeah, it does not mean Jesus, Savior of the world, what they tell you because they hang it on the cross.
That's what everyone thinks it means. That's right.
Negra in, what is that called?
Impious or...
Yeah, something like that. It is just to kill heretic kings. That's what it means in English translated, INRI. And they use that on the Jesuit Oath.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. That's right.
I can bring that up. I have this in German here. I have that written somewhere here. INRI. Oh, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this. Yeah. It says here. Well, it's in German. Iustrum neca regis impius. Iustrum neca regis impius. Or a little bit English. Iustrum neca regis impius. Means it is just to kill heretical kings, destroy their governments and rulers. Yeah, it is just to kill and to annihilate kings and governments and rulers who are not, as it says here in the book, who are not under the who are not approved by who are not in the church, or who are not approved by the Pope. So this, what we are reading here, goes actually back to the oath of the Jesuit order, but we will not go into that right now, because later in the book, P.D. Stuart deals with that.
We'll certainly get deep into it there.
He deals with that. So, but this is just we are in another part, and it says here that it was allowable to kill kings, even the king regnant, meaning the one who was reigning at that moment, when they were not in the church or approved of by the Pope. And this is taught to the college students of Louis le Grand, a Jesuit school. There they are already indoctrinated with the Jesuit dogma of INRI, as I just read to you what that means. Many of its old boys became great statesmen, leading ecclesiastics, the likes of Cardinal Fleury, and philosophers of note, like Voltaire, also known as François-Marie Arouet. If you think that Voltaire was his real name, think again. If you think that Voltaire had nothing to do with the Jesuits, think again. He was a trained Jesuit. The author of Letters to England being prime examples. Molière and Victor Hugo are two other former students who also became famous writers. And then we see here in the book a picture of the Lycée Louis le Grand. That's the entrance to the famous Jesuit school at Clermont, Louis le Grand. Countless other pupils of his Jesuits, of this Jesuit incubator at Clermont, rose to become statesmen, diplomats, prelates, marshals of France, and members of the Académie Française. Men like Georges Pompidou, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, and Jacques Chirac. I hope that you at least remember the last one, Jacques Chirac, who was the prime minister in the beginning of the 2000s in France, and Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who was president of France, I think, in the 60s and 70s, as far as I remember. When I was a child, I remember that he was a politician over there. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. And this is very difficult for me to explain that name in English, so I'll speak
Oh,
it the way that it
yes.
is pronounced in French, because
Please,
I cannot
please, please.
anglicize these French names.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's go back to the beginning of the sentence. Men like Georges Pompidou, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, and Jacques Chirac, all former presidents of the French Fifth Republic, and each one spent time on the benches of the Jesuit college Louis le Grand. That means all of them were Jesuit educated.
Mm-hmm.
Other renowned students of the College of Clermont include King Nicholas I of Montenegro and Leopold Sédar Senghor, the first president of Senegal. And we could easily add many more important names to this list. As Élie de Beaumont wrote in 1862, quote, "The Jesuit College of Paris has for a long time been a state nursery, the most fertile in great men," unquote. But why should anyone be surprised at this? Did we not read earlier about the chapter in the Moneta Secreta headed, quote, "What must be done to get the ear and intimacy of great men," unquote, when we were speaking about the confessional? Today the building stands on the very same spot, and it is still one of the most renowned schools in Paris, renamed the Lycée Louis le Grand. But we have digressed. We know the history of this building and of that school, and just by giving it another name, it won't influence what it is and what it stands for. But when you don't know the history of that building, when you don't know the history of that school, you just read, oh, it's called Lycée Louis le Grand, normal name, don't matter, and you don't know the Jesuitical history that building represents. To come back to the constitutions. Yeah, sometimes we really need to go back to this book. I'm sorry. It is so easy to get side drifted by this because it's such a wonderful subject.
Yeah.
When you are speaking of the Jesuits, you are going from the ones to from one part to another, and you come from the 100s into the 1000s of details, and they are all so important to form a complete picture. To come back to the constitutions, more than a century after the French Parliament passed its law in 1594, the Jesuits returned to power in 1723, creeping back as traders and merchants, and for some time they held out against the calls of their dissolution until the episode with Fleury, the Jesuit-educated ecclesiastic and minister of state under King Louis XV, compelled them to again retire from the field of action. In 1731, the French public was treated to yet another scandal involving 23-year-old Catherine Cardière, who accused her Jesuit confessor, Jean-Baptiste Girard, of seduction, spiritual incest, witchcraft, and the heretical doctrine of Quietism. The Cardière affair revived the long-held fears that, quote, "the Jesuit order was a foreign body penetrating the Gallican Church and the Crown," unquote. And this is taken from an 18th century study book, volume 2, from the Hopkins University Press. Now, what I want to say to this is the Cardière affair revived the long-held fears that the Jesuit order was a foreign penetrating the Gallican Church and the Crown. A foreign body penetrating the Gallican Church and the Crown. What is the Gallican Church? Well, the Gallics are the French. And the French Catholic Church always was a little bit different from the Roman Catholic Church. That's why it's called the Gallican Church. Like the Anglican Church is different from the Roman Catholic Church. In core, they are Catholics, but they have their own hierarchy. In French, you have the same thing. And the Gallican Church did not accept the ultramontanism of the Pope, meaning the absolute power of the Pope. Therefore, Rome always had a problem with the French. And the Jesuit order was a foreign body penetrating the church and the crown, meaning the Jesuits are a foreign body because they have their allegiance to Rome. That's why they are foreign. Foreign to France because they don't act for the good of France. They don't act for the good of the United States of America. They don't act for the good of Belgium or Germany or whatever country. They act for the good of the Roman Catholic Church, for Rome, for the Vatican, for the last beast, the fourth beast of Daniel 7. When we relate this to the Bible, the Jesuit order was a foreign body penetrating the Gallican Church on the one hand, meaning the spiritual part of France, and the crown, meaning the temporal power. Jesuits always infiltrate the two, because to them the state is a servant of the church. Therefore, they have to control the church, and they have to control the temporal power, the king, the crown in this case. Yeah? And that's the same way that it is today. They came in through the pulpits in the church, and they came in through Congress and Senate to the politicians. And they control both sides. They control the spiritual side, not only of the United States of America, but in the meantime of almost the complete world. And they control also the temporal side, meaning the crown, the government. Okay? They faced further scandal in 1761 due to the now famous Lavalette lawsuit of 1759. Now this is going to be interesting. This new episode of Jesuit intrigue brought about the bankruptcy of the French Jesuit Father Lavalette and exposed the inner workings of the Jesuit order, which story I will now relate. We have been warming up for almost an hour to bring you to the point where we will read about Father Valette, a Jesuit father who has been betrayed by his order, and then when he was brought to court, well, okay, I'm not going to tell it right now. I'll leave you hanging for the next part, because this is where we're going to stop the reading, because we have already done a little bit more than an hour, and we will not do much more than an hour in every reading, because we want to hold your attention to it. But in the next reading, we are going to go into the episode of the Jesuit intrigue that was brought about by Jesuit Father Lavalette, and we will read on next time here on the bottom of page 22 with the fourth reading of Codeword Barbelon, Danger in the Vatican, and the Sons of Loyola and their plans for world domination. Bret, do you have some closing comments before I can make a closing word and then you can make the final closing word? You have something else to say about the things I just read? Okay, I guess not. So then I will bring this to an end, because I don't know if maybe Bret has fallen asleep there or muted his mic and cannot find the knob to turn it on. And
I thought my mic was on. I'm sorry, everybody.
Your mic
I
is
could
on.
edit that out too, you know, if you wanted, but no big deal.
No, why?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's fine, Jörg. Go ahead and make your closing remarks.
Yeah, then I'm gonna make my closing remarks. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry we didn't go for the whole hour on the book Codeword Barbelon, even though that is needed. But I think that also the other information that you got in the first 10 to 15 minutes of this recording might be of interest to you. And for the rest, again, I can only repeat myself by saying and hoping and praying for that you not only listen to this, but you start do your own research and measure your own research on the truth that we say here. Mm-hmm. That's all that I have to say. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and until next time, Jogler66 from Hour of the Truth signing off says bye-bye.
And Bret Norman says bye-bye, and hope everyone is doing well, and please consider reading your King James Bible. Bye-bye.